A full group chat, a packed calendar, a decent social life on paper, and still feel like you're the only person on Earth. And it doesn't happen the way you'd expect. There's no single dramatic moment where you become lonely. It creeps in through the side door, disguised as being busy, being fine, being an adult who's just going through a transition phase. I spent most of my early 20s confused about why I felt this specific kind of empty, because from the outside, my life looked completely normal. I had friends, I had things going on, and I still felt like I was living inside a glass box, watching everyone else's life happen slightly out of reach. If any part of that sounds familiar, stay with me, because I want to walk you through exactly how that happened to me, and more importantly, what I did once I finally admitted it was happening. Somewhere along the way, we all absorbed the same script about what your 20s are supposed to be. It's the best years of your life. It's when you find your people. It's when everything opens up. The parties, the freedom, the friend group that's going to stick with you forever, the version of adulthood that looks like a montage in a coming-of-age movie. Nobody tells you the other version of that story. Nobody tells you that your 20s are also the decade when your childhood friend group scatters across different cities for jobs you didn't see coming. When the people you used to see every single day without even trying now require a scheduled call 3 weeks in advance that still gets rescheduled twice. When you move somewhere new for a job or a degree and you realize that making a real friend as an adult is nothing like making one as a kid. There's no shared classroom forcing you into proximity for 8 hours a day, no cafeteria table that assigns you a social circle by default. You have to build it yourself, from nothing, while also trying to survive rent and a job and everything else that's supposed to make you figured out. That gap, between the 20s we were promised and the 20s we actually got, is where the loneliness lives. And the cruelest part is that almost nobody talks about it, because admitting you're lonely in your 20s feels like admitting you failed at something everyone else seems to be doing just fine. I want to walk you through how this actually happened in my life, because I think the specifics matter more than the general idea. When I left home to study, I remember being genuinely excited. New city, new people, a fresh start. The whole idea of it felt like the beginning of the life I'd been waiting for. And for the first few months, it kind of was. You meet people in class, you get added to a few group chats, you go to the events, you say yes to everything because you're terrified of missing the window where everyone else is supposedly forming their lifelong friendships. But a lot of those connections are built on proximity, not on anything real. You're not friends with someone because you actually chose each other. You're friends with them because you happen to sit next to each other in the same lecture hall, or you live on the same floor, or you got randomly grouped together for a project. It feels like friendship because it has all the surface features of friendship. The group chat, the inside jokes, the "we should hang out soon." But underneath it, there's nothing holding it together except convenience. And convenience-based friendship evaporates the second the convenience disappears. That's exactly what happened to me. The semester ended. People moved. Schedules changed. Some people graduated and left the city entirely. And what I was left with was a phone full of people I used to see every day, and almost none of them I actually talked to anymore. Not because anything bad happened. Nobody had a falling out. It just stopped. The way most adult friendships end. Not with a fight, but with a slow fade nobody bothers to name. On a random Tuesday evening. Nothing bad had happened that day. I wasn't in crisis. I just came home, sat down, and had this sudden urge to talk to someone. Not about anything important, just to talk. The way you used to be able to knock on a friend's door when you were a teenager and just exist in the same room as them for a few hours. And I opened my phone, and I scrolled through my contacts, and I genuinely could not find a single person I felt comfortable just calling, unannounced, for no reason. I had people I could text to make plans 2 weeks out. I had people I could see at a scheduled dinner. But I didn't have anyone I could just call, right then, in that moment, the way you're supposed to be able to when you actually have people in your corner. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't lonely because I had no one around me. I was lonely because everyone around me required an appointment. That's the specific flavor of loneliness that nobody prepares you for in your 20s. It's not the dramatic, cinematic kind of alone. It's the low hum of realizing that your social life has become a series of scheduled meetings instead of spontaneous connection, and somewhere in that shift, you lost the thing that made friendship feel like home instead of a calendar event. Once I started paying attention, I realized this wasn't some personal failure unique to me. It's basically baked into the structure of adult life now. Think about how much of your day is engineered to isolate you without you even noticing. You work, maybe even from home, behind a screen, communicating through messages instead of faces. You commute alone, headphones in, eyes down. You order things online instead of talking to a cashier. You scroll through everyone else's highlight reel during the exact moments you'd otherwise be bored enough to reach out to someone. Every single piece of modern convenience removes one more small, unplanned human interaction from your day. And those tiny interactions, the ones that feel like nothing, are actually what used to stitch a social life together. And then there's the geography of it. Your 20s are statistically the decade with the most moving, new cities for school, for jobs, for opportunities you can't turn down. Every move resets your social clock to zero. You can spend 5 years building a solid group of friends somewhere, and then a job offer pulls you across the country, and suddenly you're back to being the new person again. Except this time you're also expected to have your life together, hold down a career, and somehow rebuild an entire support system from scratch, all while looking, from the outside, like a fully functioning adult who definitely doesn't need help. That's the trap. Loneliness in your 20s doesn't look like loneliness. It looks like a LinkedIn profile. It looks like a decent apartment and a stable job and a group chat that goes quiet more often than it used to. Nobody's going to check on you because on paper, you're doing great. And there's another layer to this that almost nobody says out loud. Social media makes the whole thing worse precisely because it looks like the opposite. You open an app and see everyone's weekend, the group trip, the birthday dinner, the 6 people crammed into one photo booth picture, and it convinces you that you're the only one struggling to keep a social life together. But what you're actually seeing is the one good weekend out of a month, cropped and filtered, uploaded by people who, statistically, are having the exact same quiet Tuesday nights you are. The algorithm doesn't show you their loneliness. It only shows you the highlight, and you compare your entire unedited life to their best 40 seconds. That gap is where a lot of us convince ourselves that something is uniquely wrong with our ability to connect, when really, almost everyone our age is running the same script behind a slightly different filter. I'm not going to pretend I solved this with one clean realization, because that's not how it works. But a few things genuinely shifted how I experienced this. The first was just naming it, out loud, to myself. For a long time I avoided the word lonely because it felt like an admission of failure. Like if I said it, I was confirming that something was wrong with me instead of the situation. But the second I let myself actually say, I am lonely right now, and that's real, and it's not because I'm broken, something loosened. You can't fix a feeling you're too proud to name. The second thing was understanding that I had to become the person who reaches out first, over and over, without keeping score. I used to wait for people to text me because some part of me believed that if they really cared, they'd initiate. But everyone in their 20s is drowning in the same low-grade isolation, waiting for someone else to make the first move. If everyone's waiting, nobody moves. So I started being the one who texted first, who suggested the random Tuesday hangout, who didn't wait for a special occasion to reach out. Some people didn't respond the way I hoped, but some did. And those are the friendships that actually rebuilt something real. The third thing was accepting that quality had to replace quantity. I stopped trying to recreate the wide, sprawling friend group I had as a teenager because that version of friendship belongs to a specific stage of life that doesn't come back the same way. Instead, I focused on 2 or 3 people I could actually be honest with. The kind of people you could call on a random Tuesday for no reason, and they'd pick up. That's a much smaller circle than I used to have, but it's infinitely more real. The fourth thing, and probably the one that took the longest to accept, was that I had to stop treating loneliness as a problem to be solved once and then forgotten forever. It's not a phase that ends with a clean before and after. It comes back, after a move, after a breakup, after a friend group shifts again, after a job change puts you back at square one. The goal was never to eliminate it permanently. The goal was to get faster at noticing it and better at responding to it, instead of just absorbing it in silence for another 6 months, telling myself I was fine because everyone else seemed fine too. If you're in that stretch right now, surrounded by people on paper, but quietly lonely in a way you don't know how to explain to anyone, I want you to know that it's not a personal failure and it's definitely not permanent. It's just what happens when the structure that used to hand you friendship automatically disappears and nobody teaches you how to build it on purpose instead. So maybe tonight or tomorrow, you send the text first. The one you've been putting off because you didn't want to seem needy, or because you assumed they were too busy, or because some part of you decided it was easier to just stay quiet. Send it anyway. The worst outcome is silence, and you're already living with that. The best outcome might be the beginning of exactly the kind of friendship you've been missing. I think that the friendships that actually last aren't the ones that happen to you by accident anymore. They're the ones you choose to build, on purpose, again and again, even when it's inconvenient. That's the whole difference between being surrounded and being known. Thanks for watching. If this one hit close, let me know in the comments. And maybe, while you're at it, go text somebody.